Nikkei Asia News Roundup
with Jada and Brian. Welcome to the Nikkei Asia News Roundup with your hosts, Jada and Brian.
bringing you the latest updates and insights on the dynamic world of Asia and more.
Now let's delve into the headlines. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.
South Korea's fertility rate rose for a second consecutive year in 2025, helped by an increase in marriages and more positive sentiment toward having children in the country with the world's lowest birth rate.
Wages for many blue-collar occupations in Japan are rising faster than inflation, even surpassing some office jobs, though not all such workers are benefiting from the tight labor market.
Chinese drone manufacturer DJI is suing the Federal Communications Commission in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, challenging the agency's decision to ban imports of foreign-made new products and critical components.
Technological disruption, rising costs, and shifting consumer habits are rapidly reshaping the global publishing industry. But the vice president of Penguin Random House Southeast Asia says other changes signal opportunities for publishers in Asia rather than decline.
Japanese convenience store chain Lawson will foray into India in a bid to capitalize on the gigantic market's growth potential now that new store locations in Japan are growing scarce.
Kazakhstan's reluctance to increase dependence on China as an oil exporting partner is creating an opening for the U.S., which is eager to seize on the opportunity with a strategic transit route that connects Central Asia, the Caspian, and Europe. Now moving on to the next segment.
Hitachi revival and Toyota headwinds reflect momentum shift in key sectors. Japan's business world may be in the midst of a situation not seen in the past 30 years. Based on the financial results for the fiscal year ending March 2026, the electronics industry appears to be gaining momentum, while the auto sector is losing steam. Comparing the 7 major companies in each sector, not including the unlisted Daihatsu and Toshiba, the combined profit forecast for electronics makers is 3.23 trillion yen, or $20.9 billion, not far off from Toyota Motors' 3.57 trillion yen. In the auto sector, the 6 companies other than Toyota together are set to fall short of 200 billion yen, meaning automakers' combined total is unlikely to break the 4 trillion yen threshold. Looking at the final results for the April-December 2025 period, none of the automakers saw their profits grow, partly on account of tariffs, while 6 electronics makers did. Hitachi and Sony Group performed well, and NEC and Fujitsu are showing signs of recovery thanks to new managerial practices. Hitachi says it currently has an order backlog of roughly 18 trillion yen, nearly twice its annual revenue. Even at full capacity, it would take the company about 2 years to catch up with demand. In the fiscal year ended March 2009, Hitachi posted a record loss of 787.3 billion yen, the largest of any manufacturer at the time. The company was seen as symbolic of the decline of Japan's electronics industry, but since then, Hitachi has streamlined its business into 4 clear segments and successfully executed overseas mergers and acquisitions focused on growth areas.
Vietnam tackles gold fever with black market crackdown. Vietnam has introduced fines to clamp down on illicit gold in a country where the metal is so popular that locals have quoted the prices of motorbikes and homes in gold instead of dong. People can be penalized up to 300 million dong, or over $11,000, for producing gold illegally under a new decree. Vietnam, the top gold market in Southeast Asia, unveiled the rules months after the communist state surrendered its monopoly on trade and production in October. The one-party state held exclusive control of the gold market for more than a decade. In 2012, the government introduced a regulation centralizing bullion production and trade with foreign countries through the State Bank of Vietnam. It designated the Saigon Jewelry Company as the sole producer. The monopoly and the high demand for gold as a safe haven asset led to higher domestic prices than abroad. The price of gold was already elevated internationally last year, when it was one of the best performing assets and rose 70%. Hanoi is looking to cool the gold fever that has pushed demand into the black market.
And now for news highlights. In this episode, Jada and I have a discussion about a recent article that has particularly captured our attention.
And today we'd like to talk about the latest on Trump tariffs. Specifically, maybe a little bit of focus on Southeast Asia and the impacts there, but also we have a lot of articles covering this.
Yeah, I said article in the intro there, but since the initial article came out, there's been many more because it's a constantly developing story. So long story short, the United States Supreme Court struck down a lot of President Donald Trump's tariffs.
The reciprocal
tariffs. That's part of the angle we're going to go into here is that there's not just tariffs. There's a whole bunch of different tariffs. And the ones that were struck down are those reciprocal ones that, and reciprocals in quote marks there often.
Yeah. And that was under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
Yes, or as IEPA, as Trump likes to call it, which I don't know if people say IEPA or IEPA, but there's been stories that he was very emotional when the news first passed and in private was expressing himself. But then in the press conference immediately after, he was talking about IEPA a lot. But then he was also mentioning other things like Section 232, Section 301, Section 122. And I have to wonder, what are all these different things? Because he's saying those are the other things he can implement in his quote-unquote toolbox.
Yeah, there's been, that's partly been sort of the huge confusion around what's really happening, what's going to be enacted, and what's being struck down. But so he's already announced a new sort of global blanket tariff right after the Supreme Court struck down.
It was originally 10%, that's been raised to 15%, or is being talked about being raised all over the place.
He's saying he will raise it.
That's Section 122 he was talking about. And Section 232 and 301 are specific ones that apply to different industries like autos and specifically stuff going on with China. And there's the interesting part, because those are separate from what was struck down. And it looks like he's leaning on those now. Yeah,
and there's still a lot that needs to be hashed out, but one of our stories, it sort of spoke to a lot of analysts, and they're saying that this change or the strike down of the reciprocal tariffs and potential move to these blanket tariffs could be a opportunity for Southeast Asian exporters, at least in the short term.
Yeah, that's one. Several of our articles we've had is who's going to gain from this. And one of them, it appears, for the time being, a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, because they had much higher tariff rates. We're talking upwards of 45% on some countries.
Yeah. I think one of the articles said it was for Myanmar, it was like Myanmar has a higher tariff, about 40%, Laos as well, and then others, Philippines, Malaysia, Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand is about 19%. So if the tariffs were to be 10% or 15%, they would benefit from that, obviously.
Yeah, and the other question is what of Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, which have all negotiated separate deals. That was some of the point of these tariffs, was to get countries to come to the negotiating table and hammer out trade deals. And Japan and South Korea locked those in. Or did they lock them in? That's some of the speculation going on for a lot of countries and businesses that do business with these countries.
Yeah. And there's been, including Japan, huge sort of deals, investment deals. Japan has committed to $550 billion in U.S. investments. They've just come out with announcements of the first phase of that. So what will happen to these investment deals if the reciprocal tariffs are really not there anymore? And I guess another big question that we still have yet to know is the answer to is, will the fee or the tariffs already been paid, will that be paid back?
And how do you go about that?
Yeah, and how long will it take?
How long will it take? And a lot of speculation is that it could take years for some of these situations. So do you file a complaint? Do you make an official lawsuit? Or do you wait and see and gather more information? And then, meanwhile, there's China, which is a whole separate beast because there's been different targeted tariffs and situations going on there. And Trump is going to meet with President Xi Jinping in just a week or two.
In end of March, So I thought it was interesting that Trump did also deliver his State of the Union speech, and while a year ago he talked a lot about China and sort of the battle between China and the U.S., but this year he didn't really address China. So people are saying maybe that's because he will visit. He wants to keep waters calm for now.
Yeah, saving it up for a trip to see how it goes. And I'll end it on more not lighthearted, but more of a personal stance. We have an article about how how people, like smaller businesses in the United States, are reacting to this. And the reaction right now is not necessarily wait and see, but more just kind of confusion. And there's a quote here from a business that works with import supplies from China. And they said the day the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs went from elation to insanity because it was one decision made and then more confusion added to the mix within hours.
And that brings us to the close of today's episode.
We look forward to having you join up again for the next edition of the Nikkei Asia News Roundup.
Stay informed, stay curious. Until next time, I'm Jada.
And I'm Brian. See you again, and take care. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.